Good
morning. Well, I'd like to say to the courts that Shanann, Bella, and Nico are loving, caring people. They love life. They love being around people who love them. They always had good times. This is the first time they went to the beach this year, and they loved it. But God only knows what happened that night. Life will never be the same without Shanann, Bella, and Celeste and Nico. Had all their lives to live. They were taken by a heartless one. This is the heartless one, the evil monster, who dare you take the lives of my daughters Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico.
What would you do if the person you trusted most with your daughter's life became the reason she never came home? For Frank and Sandra Rzucek, that unthinkable nightmare became their reality in August 2018. Their daughter, Shanann Watts, along with her two young granddaughters, Bella and Celeste, vanished from their home in Frederick, Colorado. A tragedy that stunned the nation, leaving a family and an entire community in shock. Shanann was more than a wife and mother. She was a daughter full of life, hope, and determination. Her parents had always been proud of the woman she had become, and they believed she had found a partner in Chris Watts, a man they welcomed into their family with trust and love. But in a cruel twist of fate, that trust was shattered in the most unimaginable way. Through the eyes of Shanann's parents, we see not just the events of that fateful summer, but the heartbreak, disbelief, and enduring strength of a family torn apart. This is a story of love, loss, and the unthinkable betrayal that changed their lives forever. If you're new here, welcome to True Crime Mysteries, where we dive deep into stories that reveal the human side of crime, the heartbreak behind the headlines, and the courage of those left behind. If you want to follow these stories with us, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. We want to hear from you too. As we share Shanann's story from her parents' perspective, think about this. How would you cope if faced with such betrayal? Share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Your insights might inspire others who are struggling to process tragedy, just like the Rzuceks. Tonight, we're not just recounting a crime. We're telling it through the eyes of those who loved Shanann and her daughters most, those who carry their memory forward every single day. This is their story. This is through their eyes. The Shanann Watts story. Before tragedy ever touched their lives, Shanann Watts was the light in every room she entered. Born in North Carolina, she was known for her kindness, her work ethic, and her determination to overcome any obstacle in her path. To her parents, Frank and Sandra, Shanann wasn't just their daughter, she was their pride. From a young age, she faced health challenges, yet she refused to let them define her. Instead, she used them as fuel to succeed, to prove that no struggle could dim her spirit. It was during this period of rebuilding her life that she met Chris Watts. He was quiet, soft-spoken, and seemed to bring her calm. To the Rzuceks, Chris appeared genuine, a man who would care for Shanann with steady devotion. They were happy for her, grateful that she had found someone who seemed to share her values and dreams. When Shanann and Chris married, it felt like a new beginning. The couple moved to Colorado, where they built a home in a peaceful neighborhood. Shanann threw herself into her family and her career, while Chris worked at a local oil company. Together, they built what looked like a picture-perfect life. Two beautiful daughters, Bella and Celeste, and a future full of promise. From her parents' perspective, every phone call with Shanann was full of stories about the girls. Bella's love for singing, Celeste's boundless energy. Small details that made Frank and Sandra feel connected even from miles away. Shanann would send photos, videos, and updates constantly. Her joy was their joy. But beneath the surface, cracks were starting to form. In private conversations, Shanann occasionally shared her worries with her parents. She noticed Chris becoming distant, less affectionate, more withdrawn. Still, she never stopped believing in their marriage. She thought time apart or counseling could help, especially as they prepared to welcome a third child, a baby boy they planned to name Nico. To her parents, Shanann's optimism was nothing new. She had always believed that love and persistence could fix anything. And because they trusted her judgment, they didn't push too hard. They offered comfort, encouragement, and the same advice they had always given: keep faith, keep your family together. What they couldn't see, what no one could, was how far Chris had already drifted away. Behind the warm family photos and smiling videos, a chilling distance was growing. And while Shanann was fighting to keep her family intact, Chris was living a double life, one that would soon destroy everything. For Frank and Sandra, those early memories are bittersweet now. Every photo, every video, every laugh shared over a phone call is both a treasure and a reminder of what was stolen from them. In their eyes, Shanann had everything to live for: love, children, and a new life on the way. They could never have imagined that the man she trusted most was preparing to take it all away.
In so many ways. I have heard people say that you're not a monster. No, you are not. You're an evil monster. Thank you. Love you, Shanann, Bella, and Nico. Love you, Pop and Dad. And one other thing. And Shanann says she is super excited for justice today. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
Then I have just one more.
Sure.
By the summer of 2018, the image of a perfect marriage that once defined Shanann and Chris Watts had begun to fade, though only a few people knew it. To most outsiders, they were still the smiling couple from social media, raising two adorable girls and expecting their third child. But to those closest to Shanann, something felt different. Frank and Sandra Ruzusek began to sense it in her voice during phone calls. Shanann had always been upbeat and expressive, but now there were pauses. Moments when she seemed to be holding something back. She spoke less about Chris and more about how hard she was trying to hold the family together. She told her parents that Chris had become distant, quiet, and detached from their daily lives. He no longer reached for her hand in public, no longer said, "I love you," without being prompted. She tried to explain it away. Maybe he was tired, maybe work was stressful. But deep down she could feel him slipping away. Her parents encouraged her to stay hopeful, reminding her that every marriage has rough patches. But as the weeks passed, small details began to worry them. Shanann mentioned that Chris was working late more often. He seemed distracted, always on his phone, avoiding conversations about the baby or their future. In July, Shanann and the girls traveled to North Carolina to visit family for 6 weeks. For Frank and Sandra, it was a precious opportunity to spend time with their granddaughters. But during that visit, they saw firsthand how heavy Shanann's heart had become. She told them she was trying to reconnect with Chris, but his replies were cold and distant. He wasn't calling as often as he used to. When he did, the conversations were brief and awkward. There were also subtle signs of tension that the parents couldn't ignore. During one family gathering, Shanann seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly, waiting for messages that never came. When her mother gently asked if everything was all right, Shanann smiled faintly and said, "We're just going through a rough time, Mom. It'll be okay." But Sandra could tell it wasn't. A mother always knows when something isn't right with her child. As the visit came to an end, Shanann returned to Colorado determined to save her marriage. She was planning a weekend trip with Chris, just the two of them, to reconnect before their baby boy arrived. In messages to her friends, she admitted she was nervous but hopeful. She wanted to believe there was still love left between them. For her parents, that hope was enough. They prayed the trip would bring them closer. They reminded her that every couple faces challenges, and that with patience and understanding, she and Chris could find their way back. But what they didn't know was that while Shanann was fighting to mend what was broken, Chris was already gone in spirit. His mind and heart were somewhere else. He was seeing another woman, hiding it behind smiles and half-truths. Shanann's parents had no idea that their daughter's determination to save her marriage would soon lead her into danger, that her hope, her faith and love, would place her face to face with the man who would take everything from her.
Thank you for this moment.
If I could just have you just identify yourself for the record.
My name is Sandra Ruzusek, Shannon's mother.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you for this moment. I want to take a moment to thank everyone who has prayed for our beloved family, who had sent gifts, cards to us from all over the world. I know God will put the evil people where they need to be. I also want to take the time to thank the town of Frederick, Greeley, FBI, the DA's office, the CBI, for exceptional work. We thank Nicole Atkinson, Shannon's neighbor Nathan, and his family. To me, they're our heroes. They really are. God bless. God makes no mistakes on who he puts in your life. Marriage is about love, trust, and friendship and unity. We marry for sickness and health, to death do us part. Our daughter Shanann loved you with all of her heart. Your children loved you to the moon and back. Shannon's family was her world. Shanann put a crown on your head. But unfortunately, the day that you took their life, God removed that crown. We loved you like a son. We trusted you. Your faithful wife trusted you. Your children adored you, and they also trusted you. Your daughter Bella Marie sang a song proudly. And I don't know if you got to see it, but it was, "Daddy, you're my hero." I have no idea who gave you the right to take their lives. But I know God and his mighty angels were there at that moment to bring them home to paradise. God gives us free will. So not only did you take the family of four, your family of four, you took your own life. I want the world to know that our daughter and her children were so loved by us. There will always be protected by God and his mighty angels. I didn't want death for you because that's not my right. Your life is between you and God now, and I pray that he has mercy for you. From Shannon's mother, Bella Marie, Celeste Catherine, and Nico Lee's, Nana. Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, that's all the witnesses that I had intended on calling, and I know that the court addressed this during the procedural posture. I am aware that Mr. and Mrs. Watts would also like to address the court. I would certainly invite the court, if you want, at this point, to call upon them, or we can certainly do it after any evidence that the defense has as well.
Sure. Does Cindy or Ronnie Watts wish to make a statement under the Victims' Rights Amendment?
August 13th, 2018 began like any other day. But for Frank and Sandra Rzusek, it would mark the start of the most harrowing nightmare of their lives. Shanann had always been diligent, always reachable, especially when it came to her daughters, Bella and Celeste. But that morning, the calls went unanswered. Her texts were ignored. At first, her parents told themselves it was normal. Maybe Shanann was busy, maybe she was putting the girls down for a nap. But as the hours passed, a growing unease settled deep in their hearts. By midday, Frank and Sandra began to sense that something was wrong. A mother's instinct, sharper than logic, whispered that this wasn't just a busy morning. They tried calling Chris, hoping for reassurance, but the conversation offered only vague responses. He sounded calm, almost too calm, a stark contrast to the worry gnawing at their hearts. Panic started to replace hope. Friends and family joined the search, but no one could find Shanann, Bella, or Celeste. Every passing hour made the fear more tangible, more suffocating. Frank remembers feeling helpless, staring at his phone, praying for a message that never came. Sandra described an icy weight in her chest, the first whisper that their worst fears might be real. Then came the police. The realization that their daughter and granddaughters were truly missing brought a new level of dread. Officers began their investigation, asking questions, piecing together timelines. Frank and Sandra cooperated fully, desperate for answers, desperate for a glimmer of hope. Chris Watts, meanwhile, appeared in public and on camera, pleading for the return of his family. To Shanann's parents, seeing him speak with such composure, asking strangers to help find their daughter while they were frantically searching at home, was almost unbearable. Every word he said, every measured glance toward the cameras, made them question what they were seeing. Was he truly desperate? Or was something far more sinister unfolding? By the next day, the truth began to emerge, a truth more horrifying than any parent could imagine. Chris Watts confessed. He hadn't just failed to protect his family, he had taken them. For Frank and Sandra, the confession shattered reality itself. The man they had welcomed into their home, trusted with their daughter and granddaughters, had betrayed them in the most unimaginable way. Their grief was immediate, searing, and unrelenting. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was disbelief, anger, and a hollow emptiness that words cannot capture. That night, their world ended. The bright, loving family they had celebrated for years was gone, stolen in a moment of unimaginable cruelty. And in the silence that followed, Frank and Sandra were left to grapple with a question that would haunt them forever. How could the man we trusted most commit such an act? This night did not just mark the loss of Shanann and her children. It marked the beginning of a lifelong struggle for understanding, justice, and a way to honor the memories of the ones they loved most. If you want, I can continue next with the shocking confession, showing the parents' emotional devastation as the truth fully emerges and Chris Watts admits to the murders. The days following Shanann's disappearance were a blur of fear, hope, and confusion for Frank and Sandra Zuzek. Every phone call, every rumor, every news report became a dagger of uncertainty. Then, on a day that will forever be etched in their memories, the world as they knew it collapsed entirely. Chris Watts confessed. The words themselves are almost impossible to comprehend. Their daughter, their granddaughters, taken by the man they had welcomed into their family with love and trust. For Frank and Sandra, it was a moment of unimaginable horror. Shock froze them in place. Pain struck like a physical blow. Disbelief coursed through their minds. How could the person they had trusted, the husband of their daughter, the father of their grandchildren, commit such an atrocity? There were no words that could capture the magnitude of the betrayal. Every memory of family dinners, holidays, laughter, and celebrations with Chris now felt tainted. Every photo, every video, every shared smile became a reminder of a trust that had been destroyed. In interviews and public appearances, Shanann's parents struggled to reconcile the man they had once known with the killer that confessed before the authorities. Frank, a man who had always been calm and composed, felt rage and heartbreak intertwining in a way that left him numb. Sandra, whose love for her daughter was fierce and unwavering, could barely comprehend the reality that her granddaughters would never grow up, never know the world they had dreamed for them. The confession was more than just a legal admission. It was the revelation that their entire world had been stolen. And yet, amidst the horror, the Zuzeks were forced to confront another unimaginable truth. Chris had killed not only Shanann, but Bella and Celeste as well. The girls they had nurtured, the little lives that had brought so much joy, were gone forever. For Frank and Sandra, grief was now intertwined with shock, anger, and the question of why. Why did this happen? Why him? How could love and trust be so violently betrayed? Even as law enforcement began piecing together the details, Frank and Sandra had to process the unthinkable on their own terms. The full scope of the loss, the emptiness left behind, and the betrayal that cut deeper than any wound. Their hearts carried not just grief for Shanann, but for the little girls who would never know their father's embrace, their grandmother's stories, or their grandfather's pride. In that moment, the Zuzeks were no longer simply grieving parents. They became witnesses to the darkest capacity of human deception, forced to endure a reality that no parent should ever face. Their daughter and granddaughters were gone, and the man who had promised to protect them had become their destroyer. It was a revelation that would define the rest of their lives, a nightmare from which there would be no waking. The world Frank and Sandra Zuzek once knew had ended on that tragic August day in 2018. Yet life did not stop. Every morning brought the reminder that Shanann, Bella, and Celeste were gone. Empty rooms, quiet halls, and the absence of laughter that had once filled their home. For Frank and Sandra, grief became an inescapable companion. Even simple moments were reminders of what they had lost. Birthday celebrations, holidays, school milestones, events that should have been joyful became painful reminders of the family stolen from them. They struggled to make sense of a reality where the daughter they had raised with love and care, and the granddaughters they had adored, no longer existed. Yet, amidst the pain, Frank and Sandra found ways to preserve their family's memory. They began sharing Shanann's story, her kindness, her ambitions, and her love with the world, ensuring that she and her daughters would not be forgotten. They honored them through charitable work, advocating for domestic violence awareness, and speaking to communities about the dangers that sometimes hide behind familiar faces. Grief, however, remained an unrelenting presence. Frank spoke often of the quiet moments when he would sit alone and remember Shanann's laughter or Bella and Celeste's small hands in his own. Sandra shared stories of Shanann's motherly guidance and the dreams she had held for her children. These memories, while painful, became a source of connection, a way to feel close to the family they had lost. For the Zuseks, moving forward was not about forgetting. It was about creating a life that honored their daughter and granddaughters while carrying their legacy forward. They learned that grief does not disappear, but it can coexist with purpose. Every charitable act, every story shared, every memory celebrated became a thread that kept Shanann, Bella, and Celeste alive in the hearts of everyone who loved them. Their strength and resilience became a beacon for others experiencing unimaginable loss. Through interviews, public appearances, and personal advocacy, Frank and Sandra transformed their heartbreak into a message that even in the face of betrayal and violence, love can endure. While life after the murders will never be the same, Frank and Sandra continue to live with a devotion that honors the family they lost. Through their eyes, Shanann and her daughters remain present, in stories, memories, and the hearts of those who hear their story.